Hi, welcome back to the Purple Air Frog Arts / PAFA wire wrapping channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make this kind of crazy thing. And it's basically a hand-painted piece of glass. It's 20 millimeters in diameter, and I have resined the back because if you just paint on glass and you don't do something to protect it from being scratched off, you're going to find that your piece is completely weird and scratched off after you've wrapped it, because wire will scratch the back of it. So every piece I've made is slightly different, and as you can tell, this one is as well. And I'm going to probably use some little bit different color beads, but I am going to use 21 gauge rose gold filled wire. And I'm also going to be using 3 pieces of 22 gauge half round wire, also gold filled, and 1 piece of 24 gauge. I'm getting confused about everything here. So the 24 gauge is a little bit smaller. I only use 24 on this piece, and I think that the wire wraps are a bit smaller than I would like for this particular style, but I will be using the smaller wire on the connections for the bead at the bottom. Let's go over what you'll need. So wire straighteners, flush cutters, probably a pair of these round nose pliers just for this one little loop we're going to do at the end. Tweezers are really good because if you're working with really tiny wires like that, it helps to pull things through. Flat nose are good for making your bend in the bottom where we make the wraps, and a ruler, and also probably some painter's tape. I think that covers it. Oh, and of course, tweezer nose pliers. Okay, so the first thing we will do is take one of the 24 gauge half rounds, and now I have to make sure which one's which. Oh no, I think I've mixed them together. Okay, that was the thinner one. I don't want the thinner one right now, so I'll set that aside. Okay, so you're gonna do a few wraps as usual. This particular piece is a little bit more advanced just because of all the fiddling involved. But you've probably already seen how to do this particular thing, and I may speed through it or cut it out. We want about 10 wraps, and 10, okay, and that's just about the right size. And then we're going to take them around to the back. Probably better use the tweezer nose. Just press that down. These wires, by the way, if I didn't say it, are 9 inches long, the main wires. The other wires are about 3 inches long, and 3 inches is about right for 10 wraps. The 24 gauge is maybe 3 inches long, but I doubt you'll need that much, but it makes it a little bit easier to pull it through a tight space when you have a longer piece like that. So it's 9 inches, so we want to be right at 4.5 inches, which is where we are. Now we're going to take our flat nose pliers, press this down, and then right around the middle, you want to make a V. And don't make it too tight because the round piece is kind of wide, and you want to be able to get it around it. So if it's too tight, that won't work. I also did forget to mention we're going to use some little beads. I've got a bunch of them here. I'm not sure which ones. I'll probably use like a red and a purple. On the first one I used a light purple and a dark purple. This one has more red and blue in it, so I may use a red and blue. We'll see how it works out. Either 3 or 4 and 5 or 6, but I think probably around 4 millimeters is best for what we're going to do here. I did not check to see which size they were, but so I think that's about right. I'm going to try to bend this a bit like that. May need the tape for this because I want to be sure that it gets around the sides correctly. So you put some tape on the bottom there, and then we're going to leave a gap here at the bottom. And so get your tape and try and tape it to where these 3 wires are directly over the edge. Let's see, I'm going to try and wrap the other one too, just to get it sort of tight. But making sure they're not, that when you wrap it, that these wires don't overlap each other, because they need to be straight. You also might want a measuring pad like this. I mean, it's not really about the measurements so much as the lines that are nice and straight. You want your wraps to be right around the middle of the bottom. You can do 8 or 10, whatever you feel most comfortable with. And making sure that that point is directly over one of the straight lines, and making sure they're not twisted or anything like that. Then go about to where it looks like you're going to have sort of a, what is this shape? I'm going to call it a leaf shape. I don't know, an eyeball shape maybe. And making sure they're both about the same size. So, and then when it crosses over, take your tweezers and press up right at the line. Same thing over here. And once you've got one, it's easier to do the second one because you just want to kind of line it up with the first one. Sorry, I'm off camera there. And then just see where that first one is. And then if you want to go back and just check that they're lined up on the line like that. Okay, now you can put your thing back. Well, you don't need that. I need it because it's easier to see on camera with something solid than with all that distracting lineage, whatever you want to call it. Okay, I'm going to take the 22 gauge half round off the spool for the bail because I don't know exactly how much I need. I want to get to about 1.25 inches for the bail, and it's probably about 15 inches, but because I'm not entirely sure, it's just easier to keep it on the bail so I don't waste my wire. Did I say bail? I meant spool. I would suggest you do the same thing so that you're not wasting any wire, or that, God forbid, you don't end up with your bail being too short because you run out of wire that you've cut off of the spool, and you don't want to do that. So it would take about 1 inch or so, and I've done this in most of my videos. Just wrap it 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 if you have enough, and just, you know, I only have enough here actually for 2, and I'll wrap more before I do the bail. Coming from the spool, I will wrap more. But anyway, the point is to get a couple of wraps, get it nice and, you know, underneath there so that it's tight. Cut that off flush like I just did, and make sure these are nicely lined up. Pull it tight and do a couple of more wraps. I would say get about 4 wraps. Then once they're nice and tight, make sure these guys are all lined up. Separate out the 2 front and 2 middle wires. And then the last wires in the back will be your bail. But we have other things to do before we end up doing that. And one of those other things, we're going to take the stone out. And we're going to use these other wires and do 8 wraps on the sides, right around where the middle is there. The middle of that, right around there. And before you start wrapping, it all should be lined up nicely at this point. Make sure your half round sides on the inside. And actually, if these get in the way, just move them. And I probably have a bit more than I needed for 8 wraps, but I just didn't want to be too short. And I'll probably speed through these, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. And I'll just cut this off and I'll come back. Okay, I am back, and I've wrapped both of sides of this 8 times and cut off the ends on the inside and press them down. And this one's a little bit bent, these wires, so I'm just gonna push them out and make sure all the wraps are where we want them. With the wraps being right over that curve there, go to the back. This is the back. Just hold on to one and then just bend. Actually, I think I'll go from this side. Just bend in right maybe a little bit lower, right where the stone will be. Kind of like that. Then you probably have to flip over, which is what I do, to do the other side, making sure wraps on the other side haven't moved. And you may have to pull this out wider again when you're done because it looks like I've squished it together a bit. And just make sure that you're only grabbing one of the 3 wires right about where you want that. Okay, see, I've squished this back in now, and you don't want that. Make sure that your wraps haven't gone way up on you. And I'm gonna just do this one, because I think I did it a little overzealously. I'm gonna bend it a little lower, down like that. Okay, that's just, now that's the back, and now I've gone and squished these wires in again. So for the next part, you want your stone in, I think, because we want to make sure that the stone's still going to fit. And the back is tight now, so get these a little bit lower. So we're going to try to do the same thing right below the stone, if you can see where it's going to, like, you're going to grab it like right below and it'll go up onto the stone. Just the one, like that. Okay. And then flip it around. And it's still going to want to pop out because the top is pretty wide. And actually, yeah, it's not looking symmetrical up there. Okay, so I'm going to flip this around. And making sure, because these have kind of like bent inward, make sure they're not bent inward. Grab your wire about the same spot on the other side and push it in. So it should look something like that. I'm going to try and just kind of gently press that down in there. Move your wraps back to where they should be. Straighten this up if it's gotten wonky. Oh, it's gotten very wonky. I see what I've done wrong here. Okay. This is probably too high compared to the other side. A little bit more like that. And actually moving them in closer toward each other is probably preferable. But you don't want your frame to get out of whack when you do that. Secure the back so that I have more of a cradle for it before I try to do. I probably should have done the top and bottom back first. Okay. Just want to make sure that looks relatively symmetrical here. And in the meantime, I'm getting my my bale wire all out of whack. Okay. Press those down. They don't want to stay, you know? They really don't want to stay when you try to press them down. So move one in like that. And then move the other one. It's kind of hard not to make sharp turns there. And as you do that, your bale wires are going to keep coming apart. You're going to have to put them back together. I'm going to put the stone in and hope for the best. And it has, yeah, it has gotten a bit tight, shall we say. It's best to pull from where the wraps are to make it wider. Okay, There is a method to the madness. There usually is. Sometimes it's not. It's not as obvious as it should be. And press it down so your stone goes down pretty far. And then make sure that these guys are against the stone. And you're going to bring your wire on one side or the other. Just try to bring it down. Flip it over. Do the same thing on the other side. Separate the wires first if you can. Try to do it about the same area that you did it on the other side. Now, I know that was a convoluted way to get to this, but it got there, I think. Okay. All right. So I know I could have done this with a little more grace and ease, but it is done. And just try to make it look symmetrical if you can. And make sure these are not twisted down. And it is harder with square wire. I'm going to have to use the Dremel to get some of these scratches out. But you can also take this and just kind of press that way to get it in more. And I think it looks, except for how I've bent up the wires, it looks more or less. I may have to do this a little bit more like that. Oops. Yeah, and try not to do that because that is never good. See, I'm working on a piece of glass which is slippery. That can present a problem as far as your tool not slipping when you try to do that. So, not perfect, but it is relatively symmetrical. And I'm going to try to line things up with the back and the front the best you can so that you don't see the back wires when you're looking through the front so much. It's not perfect, but it is going to have to do. All right, so that is what we have so far, although we had a very convoluted way of getting there. And just going to bend that a little bit more. Try and make it symmetrical. But as you can see, the bale wire got a little crazy with all the twists and turns, so I'm going to use my wire straighteners, and I'll probably cut this out because it's going to take a minute, so I'll be back. So I did get that straightened out, and I'm ready to do the bale now. So I'm going to do this one more wrap here because I'd like to have 4. So I am going to cut this out again, but I'm just showing you, you know, do your wrap and then come from behind and go into there. It will be a little bit challenging at first with the other wires still kind of in the way, but once you get going, and just do it to about 1.25 inches, and when I get back, I'll show you how you want to just sort of bend it over to check before you cut your wire off to make sure your bale is the size you want it to be. But basically just, you know, keep your wrapping tight and keep it close so you don't get it all twisted up like I had it before. And and make sure nothing overlaps, and we'll be back in a minute. Okay, so I've got this up to about 1.25 inches, and I want to just double check and make sure that the bale is about the length I want it to be. So what you do is just bend it forward, use your finger. You could use bale making pliers, but I always use my finger. You want to press it under there and see where your wraps meet underneath there, if that looks like a good length for the bale. And let's see, I might want it a little bit smaller because I think this piece is pretty long to begin with. I'm going to unwrap a few wraps, check it again. Might want it a little bit wider. I think that's good, so I'm going to go ahead and snip this off and then wrap the end of it back behind. You never want the end in the front of, you want the end inside is what I'm trying to say. Make sure that's down tight. Okay, now push that through as best as you can. I'm going to do that and then bring these around. I usually pull from the end. Bring those around underneath. And your bail's going to want to try to, bend backwards. So try to bend that up. And then you're going to snip it off, leaving enough room to tuck it under. Okay. All right, that's one side. And you can also just do one side and snip the other one right here at the front. I'm just going to do both for this one, but that would work too, as long as you've secured one side. You don't really need both. And it's probably not even going to be obvious through the design, but I do that. And if you accidentally cut it too short, that's another option, because if you cut it too short to get it tucked under, that could be a problem. Okay. When you push it and flatten it down here, that makes it a little bit longer. And you can kind of see through there that wire that we originally stuck through to secure the bail, that will be hidden. Okay, so this is what we have so far. And I'm just going to make a couple adjustments because I can see that looks a bit different. Square wire, it's really easy to mess it up. And if you do mess it up, having a Dremel handy later to try to fix any mistakes or messes you made with it is a good idea. I'm try and press these guys in a little bit. Make sure your bail is straight. It's as symmetrical as it can be. It's not going to be perfect necessarily. If you're really perfect with being symmetrical, I applaud you. It is it's not easy. And let's see, I think this one I probably went too high, so I'm going to try and straighten that out a little bit. Maybe, but when you bend one way with the square wire, it can get kind of wonky looking, so I'm going to have to try to fix some of this with the Dremel later. And rose gold, for some reason, it just seems to be, it's probably true with gold as well, it just seems to be a little bit harder to keep those little scratches off. So keep that in mind. You can use any kind of wire. I find craft wire to be more difficult to work with. I like to work with copper, rose gold, and sterling silver mostly. And that's just what's more comfortable to me, but you work with what makes you most comfortable and what you find easiest to work with, because the design is the design, whether it's in gold or silver or copper, whatever. So now we're coming down toward something else that we're going to do. Let me just fix this wire because I can kind of see it and it's bugging me. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the two right wires and we're just going to kind of, with our finger, and I think I might make it smaller than this one. This one looks a little too big for my happiness here, so I might make these a little bit smaller. And the way you do that is by pulling on the end. You don't want to pull there, although you may push there. So I'm going to do that. And then I'll do it with the one next to it. Same thing, just give it curve it around, and then hold on to it as you bend it toward the back, because you don't want it getting out of shape. Now you can tuck these guys in. Actually, trying to figure out, because I don't want, there's not a whole lot of room. So I'm going to see the next wire that I'm going to do. I'm going to take from the left, and it's also going to go, I'm thinking, because these are all straight. And I did do a curve here, but I think I'm going to curve the whole thing first. And when I say curve, I mean twist. My words escape me on a regular basis. And if you have a good bead, it should be able to fit over it, whether it's twisted or not. So let's hope for the best here when I go to put my bead on. So I've twisted it. I'm going to bring it around and be cautious bringing it around. Then figure out which bead you want to use. In this case, I don't know, I might use this blue bead. And it does have a good big hole, so that'll be good. So just make sure your bead has a hole big enough to do what you want it to do. So I think that kind of looks better. And you have to bring this, if these are in the way, bring them out of the way. You have to bring this, there's a reason I haven't tied them down yet. Bring this all the way around and it's going to go under. Kind of cradle the bottom of the bead like that. And if it looks awkward in any way, you can adjust it. Like there's sort of a little awkward bend there, in my opinion. With the other one, I blocked the top two wires into the back of the bail. You can do that, or if you have room, you can just do all of them back here. But because this goes around underneath, if you can see, when I wrap this underneath, it's going to make it awkward to cut these and put them there. So I think I will also take these and do them in the back of the bail here. Make sure your bail is straight before you do that. Cut off just enough so you can tuck it under. I'm going to try to put the bottom one in first. Okay. And it gets trickier. So I probably should have tied these in first, but I wasn't sure where I was going to tie them in. It gets trickier when you have more wires in the way. So now I'm going to put this one in here, if I can fit it. Okay. So it did bend outward a bit when I tried to tie it in, so you can just kind of take the side of your wire and push it back. And this one, I want a little more space there. Maybe just, yeah, okay. Now we're going to take that last one and just make double sure that it sits. So when I pulled it around, I'm going to pull it around again because I don't really like how it's sitting. So this I want, and hold on, put your thumb in front of that as you pull so that you don't get that out of shape. Okay, and it should line up just with, and I'm going to pull it down a little bit from the side because it looks a little too tight on this side. Okay, then just snip it enough that you can tuck it under, holding on to that bead again as you do this so it doesn't get out of whack. And press that down. And there we go. Now for this one, you know what, I want to twist that one too. But first my bail got a little bit whacked out, so I just want to shape it out. Okay, I'm going to twist this one too. I'm not going to use this much wires. I'm going to just take about half of that off so it's not a waste of my energy trying to twist all of it. Just twist it if you want. You don't have to. And I'm going to bring it around and then hold on to it, and I'm going to try to make a little circle. Maybe I won't even need my round nose pliers if I can do this without them. It's not as circle shaped as I'd like it to be, so I'm going to go ahead and So I'm gonna just put the round nose pliers in there and then just kind of pull. So that makes it more of a circle shape. Okay, and this is very, you know, it's, even though it's dead soft, the rose gold tends to be a bit harder. And when you twist a square wire, you're work hardening it. So it's not like the loop is really going to go anywhere. Plus, I want to cut it with the flush side out of the circle, so it leaves a little bit of a point, because we're going to bend that point up and in. Let's see if I can show you. Like that. And press this back down against there, and it shouldn't go anywhere. Okay, so you have just a little decoration here. I might actually bend it a little bit more down, so it kind of sticks out the side so you can kind of see it. Okay, so this is what we have so far. And the last bit, and I think I'm going to put a red bead right here because there's red in it, because that looks like it's about the right size. Okay, so I'm going to take that final piece of half round, but this is the smaller half round, the 24 gauge. So we want to do about, I don't know, 3 to 4 wraps on each side. And so make sure you leave enough wire to do that. So, and getting it through may not be as easy as you would like, but one of the things that will help with that is to make a hook on the end if you can, like a little, right at the very end. It should not be bent like this. Okay, so get the other part out of your way if possible, and then you pull that hook up. Okay, that's one wrap. And I may cut through all this or speed through it because it is tedious and takes a minute. And you've got the general idea. Okay, so I've got the last wrap. That is 4 wraps on each side. Then I'm going to go ahead and take these snippy thing, flush cutters, and just cut underneath, get that last bit like that, and then press it down. Okay, so if you want, you can move these wires up a bit to differentiate them from the bottom wires. Make sure your bottom wires are, not wraps, I should say, are nice and even looking. And I think we're just about done here. If you need to make any adjustments to your side things, words escape me all the time, what can I say? Make your adjustments as necessary. This one's a little bit tough to get everything even, but did my best. I hope that you liked this video, and I really would welcome any questions. If you would like and subscribe, it would be most appreciated. And this is the finished product, and this was the other one. So there's a little bit of a difference. You can use whatever beads or glass or stone, whatever you prefer. This was just my way of doing it. And I hope that helps. And if you don't do this particular design, you know, you can learn something from it. And hopefully it's not just a cautionary tale. Anyway, have a great rest of February. I don't know if I'll be back before then, but I wish everybody the best. And thank you so much. And ask me anything in the comments if you have questions. Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.